Hello! Welcome to another Music and Meaning concert here at the Dulsheimer Auditorium at Baltimore Hebrew Congregation. My name is Dan Weiser. I am the founder and artistic director of AmiciMusic. We want to thank the Peggy and Yale Gordon Foundation for making this series possible. And today we have a wonderful program we call Wind Power, featuring fantastic oboe player Ron Erler, wonderful bassoon player Sandra Johnson, and I will be on the piano. We hope you really enjoy this fantastic program. It's going to have music of Beethoven, Russian composer Mikhail Glinka, and French composer Gabriel Faure. Our first piece today is an early work by the great Ludwig van Beethoven, who we have been celebrating all year long as he turns 250 years old this December. This is a piece that he wrote in around the year 1796. He had come over from Bonn, Germany in 1792 and had begun to study with Franz Joseph Haydn, then the greatest living composer. He had hoped to study with Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, but Mozart died in December of 1791. But Haydn and Beethoven did not always get along too well. Haydn wanted Beethoven to write more charming, tasteful music, and Beethoven was already a stubborn young man who believed that he had all the answers to where music was going, and in many cases he did. And Beethoven was also at this time a remarkable piano player. That's in fact what he was most known for when he first came to Vienna. And he took part in several different piano duels with famous pianists who were also in Vienna at the time. There's a wonderful story by Anton Reicha, a friend of Beethoven and fellow composer, who was turning pages for him at one of these early concerts. And Beethoven was known for the power of his playing, that nobody had ever played like him before, his full body getting into the works, and he often left behind a graveyard of pianos. And here's what Reicha said. Beethoven had asked me to turn pages for him, but I was mostly occupied in wrenching the strings of the piano which had snapped, while the hammers stuck among the broken strings. Beethoven insisted on finishing the concerto, so back and forth I leaped, jerking on a string, disentangling a hammer, turning a page. I think I worked harder than Beethoven. This piece actually came about because Beethoven was friends with a clarinetist named Joseph Baer. And there was a well-known song being sung in the streets of Vienna. It had come from an opera, The Corsair. And basically, the words to the opera were, "Before we work, we must have something to eat." That is the little aria, the little tune. And Joseph Baer suggested to Beethoven that he write a movement, theme and variations, based on that tune. That would become the third movement of this piece, and that's why we call it the Gassenhauer Trio, or the Street Song Trio. Now, Beethoven actually never liked the third movement of this, and he talked about changing it, but he never did. The first movement has that great power and drive. Second movement, a very gorgeous movement, and in this case we have the bassoon playing the cello part, and I just love how it sounds on that instrument, especially in the upper range. But it's this last movement that is kind of a fascinating story about it. This piece was first premiered at the home of Moritz von Fries, a friend of Beethoven. And at that first performance, one of these great virtuoso pianos, Daniel Steibelt, happened to be there, coming from Paris. And he heard this piece, and he had heard about Beethoven as this wonderful pianist, but he didn't think that piece was so scary. He said, I think I could challenge him. So he challenged Beethoven to a duel. And a few days later, they happened to meet back at the Count's home, and Steibelt got up and first did his own sort of a piece, and then he began improvising on the theme from that same third movement. Now that angered Beethoven considerably. He didn't like anybody messing around with the tunes that he had already put to variations. So we have a great story, as told by one of the people there. It said the following. Steibelt had first played a quintet, which had a good deal of success with the audience. He then played an improvisation, which had obviously been carefully prepared, choosing the same theme on which Beethoven had written variations for his clarinet trio. This incensed the admirers of Beethoven and Beethoven himself. It was his turn now to seat himself at the piano and improvise. He went up in his usual, I might say, ill-bred manner to the instrument, as if half-pushed, picked up the cello part from Steibelt's quintet in passing, placed it intentionally on the stand upside down, and with one finger began drumming out the theme from the first few measures of that quintet. Then, impelled by his insulted and excited feelings, he improvised in such a manner that Steibelt left the room before he finished. Steibelt would never again see Beethoven again. When invited anywhere, he always stipulated that Beethoven could not be present. So we hope you enjoy this wonderful piece, very early Beethoven, showing his youthful excitement. Enjoy Beethoven, Opus 11. Our next piece moves us into the more romantic period, the 1830s to be exact, and the music of a Russian composer, Mikhail Glinka, who was often described as the father of Russian classical music, who was a very important influence on the future Russian composers like Tchaikovsky and Balakirev and Rimsky-Korsakov, with his ideas of Russian national music. And in fact, one of his great quotes is, "The nation composes its music, the composer only arranges it." Glinka was born into a very wealthy family when he was a sickly child and was often confined to his bedroom and listened to the sound of the church bells going off. And his uncle had an orchestra that often played, and the music really had an effect upon him. He said, "Music is my soul." But early on, he had a job, a kind of menial job, as an assistant secretary of the Department of Public Highways. Apparently, there was not a lot of work that he had to do, so he got to spend a lot of time composing music and playing some piano. And ultimately, in 1830, he gets told by a physician, because of his ill health, to head down to Italy for a little while. And it's while he's in Italy that he begins to listen to the operas of Bellini and Donizetti. And you will hear in this piece a lot of the influence of those operas, especially in the third movement, which is kind of the center of this movement. It feels very much like a bel canto opera moment in there. The whole piece really doesn't have that much Russian quality to it. It sounds more like Mendelssohn in its second movement, Chopin in its third movement. But in the outer movements, the last one being a very short movement, there is this kind of trio Pathetique, as it's called, a more tragic setting to the music. And supposedly, this was written after a love affair fell apart. And in fact, on the score in French, Glinka wrote, "The only way I know love is by the pain it causes." So I think we don't know exactly which love affair it was. He apparently had several different singers he was in love with while he was in Italy. But you will hear the pathos of that first movement, then that much lighter scherzo second movement, the gorgeous third movement, which has that Chopinesque and operatic Bellini quality. And then the last movement, very short, just sort of summarizes the whole piece, bringing back part of that first movement as well. So here's a very early work. We think it was written in 1832, although it was not published in Moscow until 1878, long after Glinka had died. He did die writing the first great Russian opera, Ruslan and Ivan Susarin, and The Life of the Tsar, Ruslan and Ludmilla. So he goes down in history as one of those first great Russian composers, and here's a very early work that he wrote, Mikhail Glinka's Trio Pathetique. Our final piece today is a wonderful arrangement of a very famous four-hand piano work by Gabriel Faure, known as the Dolly Suite. It has been arranged by Christopher Keyes, a fantastic composer and friend at the University of New Hampshire, although I believe he's just retired from there, and he has graciously let us have this piece. We played one of his arrangements of Bizet's children's games at the last concert we did with oboe, bassoon, and piano. We loved it so much, we wanted to try this piece as well. Faure is one of the great French composers of the end of the last century, of the 19th century, and into the 20th century. One of his great quotes was, "Music exists to elevate us as far as possible above everyday life." And with all the commotion of the pandemic and the election, we hope that this concert and the music will help elevate us to a new place. Another great quote by George Warwick, he said, "Faure's achievement was to invent musical forms which attracted our hearts and senses without debasing them. He offered an homage to beauty in which there was not only faith, but a discreet yet irresistible passion. The delicate precision of his architecture, the concision of his ideas will long guide us in our moments of anxiety." He was born in 1845, grew up playing a lot of church music, did not actually go to the Paris Conservatory. He went to a different school, the Niedermeyer School, which specialized in the training of church musicians. And he actually had a job as an organist at the prestigious Madeleine Church in Paris. But he had a wonderful young teacher, Camille Saint-Saëns, who encouraged him to sort of go more into composing. And he had kind of a sad love life. He had fallen in love with Marianne Viardot, the daughter of a well-known singer, and courted her for several years. And in fact, they were engaged. But in the 1870s, she suddenly broke off the engagement. He then married a woman, Marie Frémier, the daughter of a sculptor. They had a couple kids together, but apparently it was a rather loveless marriage. And Faure then subsequently went on to have several different affairs, including one with a woman named Emma Bardock, a wonderful soprano, the wife of a wealthy banker. And it was for her daughter, whose name was Hélène, but who was nicknamed Dolly, that Faure wrote this suite of music that he actually wrote over several years, giving, there are 6 total pieces, giving them as different presents for her for each birthday or other occasions during that year. And we know that they had an affair. There are some thought that that Dolly was actually Faure's child, although we're not quite sure about that now. In the end, they did not stay together. And a few years later, actually, Emma Bardock ended up having an affair with Claude Debussy, another French composer, and they actually did run off together and get married. Debussy had his own wife at the time who tried to kill herself at that moment. It's a great soap opera there in France. But this piece was, as I mentioned, the first movement is the most famous. It's a beautiful lullaby, a berceuse, that was written for Dolly's first birthday. The second movement is called Miaou, which sounds like a cat, meow, but it actually doesn't refer to a cat. It refers to the fact that Dolly was trying to pronounce the name of her older brother, Raoul, and she could only say Monsieur Aoul, which came out like Miaou, and that Faure thought was quite funny, so we did a very cute little second movement. The third movement is gorgeous. It's the Le Jardin de Dolly, Dolly's garden, which they had a beautiful garden in the back. There's actually a quote from Faure's wonderful violin sonata in that one. Then there's a kitty waltz, which again is not about a cat, believe it or not. The Bardocks had a pet dog named Ketty, and apparently this is supposed to be called the Kitty Valse, but some publisher turned it into Kitty Valse, and it does sound like an animal sort of whirling around, having fun. The fifth movement, called Tendresse, a beautiful, chromatic, sort of searching movement, finding its own harmonies. And then the last one, Le Pas Espagnol, the Spanish dance, based upon, again, a sculpture that was on the mantelpiece at the Bardac home of a Spanish horseman. So we hope you really love this great, great work, originally for four-hand piano. Here is the Dolly Suite by Gabriel Faure. Thank you again for being a part of this music and meaning concert with AmiciMusic here at the Baltimore Hebrew congregation. We thank everyone at Baltimore Hebrew for all of their wonderful support, and especially the Peggy and Yale Gordon Foundation for making it all possible to do these free concerts. And we hope you will tune in. Coming up next weekend, we are going to do all of Beethoven's works for cello and piano. That is live from Asheville, North Carolina. Check out AmiciMusic.org, and you can get all the live streams for all of those wonderful works. It's a three-concert epic journey through all of Beethoven's works for cello and piano. Thank you again for being a part. Thank you to Ron Erler on oboe, Sandra Johnson on bassoon for their wonderful colleague. Thank you as well to Emmanuel and Francis Borowski for, again, being there to put this recording together. And thank you all for watching and being a part of it. Have a great week.